A woman received a mysterious phone call at night, so she left the house, and what happened to her next will leave you shocked. Samantha Jenkins received a phone call at around 1 a.m. from an unknown number. The person on the phone call told Samantha to immediately come to the park or else something bad was going to happen to her. The person then told Samantha that a robber was on the loose and that he was looting people's houses, and Samantha had to leave her house immediately. Quickly, Samantha got very scared and she took all of her belongings and ran outside the house to the park nearby. But it was only once she got there that she realized that this was actually a prank call. Now super scared, Samantha decided to turn around and head back home when she saw that a car was following her. At first she thought it was her friend, but as she looked closer she noticed the car looked a little creepy and that it was actually following her right next to her. So Samantha immediately freaked out and started running in the dark when she noticed that someone had gotten out of the car behind her. And that's when Samantha's entire life flashed before her eyes. Follow for part 2. A woman received a mysterious call at night, so she left the house, and what happens next will leave you shocked. Part 2. Watch my latest video for part 1. Samantha had made it all the way to the park when she noticed that this was actually just a prank call and that nobody was there to help her. Immediately, she began to get really freaked out because she noticed that somebody had been following her the entire time, and it was probably someone dangerous. And that's when she took one look behind her, and what she saw next will leave you shocked. But before I show you guys what it was, you have got to click the link in my bio now, because I have 4 links in my bio that allow you to get all of these things for free, including $7.50 on Cash App, a free PS5, a free Xbox, and even a free Nintendo Switch. Hurry and fill out all of these forms and you're gonna get them all for completely free. Anyways, Samantha turned around and she noticed that it was actually just a police officer who was following her around. Apparently, the police officer was notified that a mysterious number had been calling random people, but they never found the caller.
Scariest urban legends from every state. Texas, the Candy Lady. In the 1900s, children in an unnamed rural town began to go missing, and people were blaming it on the Candy Lady. The story says that she would go around leaving candy on children's windowsills, and she would be able to lure them in by leaving notes promising more candy. This story picked up steam when a farmer found rotted teeth on his farm and eventually found the dead body of a boy with candy stuffed in his pocket. While little is known about the origin of this story, many claim that the Candy Lady is real and her name was Clara Crane. Whichever state gets the most likes, I'll do tomorrow.
Do not watch this video at night time. Trust me. On Halloween 2017, there was a young girl just chilling at home. She just moved out of home into her own place. She sat down to watch a film and got a few trick-or-treaters, but by 10 o'clock they were all gone. She then got a knock at her door. She walked over to the door and opened it, but was pretty creeped out because it was so late now. However, she opened it to see a strange hooded man standing there, staring at her. He said, "Let me in." She was young and stupid, and let the man in because she was terrified for her life. The man came in, sat down in the kitchen, and didn't say anything. He just got a piece of paper out and wrote something on it. He then stood up and walked out. The young girl was ridiculously confused, like, what's going on? She then looked at the piece of paper which had the name's passport ID and name on it. She was really confused and concerned for this man's mental health, so she called the hospital to ask for help. A woman in the hospital answered, and this other woman told her this guy's name and everything. The woman in the hospital said, "He's been dead for 10 years.
This is why you should always remember your parents' phone number. A man named Leah met a girl named Ava. The two fell in love in high school and decided to get married. They worked every day in order to save up for a house, but things changed when Ava became pregnant. They were both shocked to find out that Ava was pregnant since they were both young and it wasn't planned. 9 months later, Ava gave birth to a little girl named Casey. A couple years go by, Liam and Ava are constantly arguing and begin to talk about divorce. So the two sat down together and formed a plan to fix their relationship. One day, Casey goes missing. After searching for a couple years, there was no luck in finding Casey. Ava and Liam begin to move on and start life over. 15 years later, Ava and Liam are sitting on the couch when suddenly Liam's phone rings. Liam answers the phone and says hello, and then his face sinks. Ava says, "Who is it?" Liam looks at her terrified and says, "It's Casey." Ava looks at Liam and says, "How? I thought you killed her to spend more time with me."
That's why you should never leave your bedroom window open at night. Back in 2015, it was a boiling hot summer night and a young girl was living on her own. As it was so hot, she thought, I'm just going to leave the windows open because, it's boiling. So she got into bed just like every other night and obviously left the window open because it was so hot. But in the middle of the night, she then heard a load of banging in her house. When she woke up, she was terrified. She saw a dark figure outside of her bedroom in the corridor. She didn't get up, she didn't even move because she was so terrified. She then saw this terrifying figure just walking around her corridors, and she was absolutely terrified. She rolled over and hid under her blankets. Somehow, she actually managed to get back to sleep. When she woke up in the morning, she checked around the house and couldn't find anything. She then went on the CCTV app and found the evidence from the night before. She saw around 3 men in her house. One of them looked straight up at the camera, literally. The men had obviously climbed through her window at night and tried to rob her house.
This old lady killed so many people. Baba Anushka, she loved chemistry. And when her husband died, she was like, I'm gonna make the house into a laboratory and sell potions. So a bunch of girls came to her and they were like, we don't want our husbands to go to war. And she was like, I can make them really, really sick so they don't have to. And they were like, yeah, do that. So she started getting really, really popular. But then all the girls were like, we actually don't like our husbands. Can you do a little more? And Baba Anushka was like, yeah, I can kill them. So then all the girls were like, oh, we like this. So Baba Anushka made these deadly potions, gave them to the girls gave them to their abusive husbands, and they were dead in like 8 days. And Baba Anushka would do this thing where she'd ask the girls, how heavy is the problem? Which was code for, how heavy is your husband? Because I gotta make sure I put enough in it, mama. She was so successful that she hired a sales agent to go into town and like sniff out people with marital problems. But this one girl fucked it all up. After she killed her shitty husband, she used another potion to kill her new husband's rich uncle. And the police were like, can you explain this? And she was like, it was Baba Anushka. Baba Anushka was like, are you fucking kidding me? But she ended up getting out of jail and then living to 100.
This is why you should never stay awake past 3 a.m. A woman in her early 20s was away from home on a business trip. The night before she was supposed to board her plane, she had trouble sleeping and had this intense fear that someone was staring at her in her room. She was up until 3, tossing and turning until she started to hear whispers. It was a deep voice repeating the words, I'm coming to get you, I'm coming to get you. But she ignored it and eventually fell asleep. After her plane landed, she was exhausted but drove home anyway. About 30 minutes into her drive, she started hearing the same whispers from the previous night, but she thought it was because she was sleep deprived, so she kept driving. She was almost home when she began to feel sick. Her eyes were watering, her nose was running, and she let out a large sneeze. Bless you, said the same deep, eerie voice. She quickly pulled into her driveway, hugged her husband, and sat down to tell him what was going on. When this happened,
I can still hear that voice.
This little girl went missing, and 20 years later, the police make a horrifying discovery. In 1998, a 6-year-old girl named Sophie went to school like usual, but that day she just never came home. Years went by, and nobody knew what happened to the little girl. So her friends and family finally came to the realization that she was gone. Well, 20 years later, an anonymous letter was given to the police saying that the missing girl's family had a secret. Intrigued by the letter, the police rushed to the family's house. They showed them the letter and then asked to search their property. The family agreed, so they searched the house, but they didn't find anything. But on their way out, they noticed something very peculiar. At the end of some stairs was a door that was padlocked shut, and when the family refused to open it, they busted it down and made a horrifying discovery. Part 2 is on a new live streaming app called Bigo. Press the link in my bio if you want to see what they found.
This is why you should never open spam emails. Do not watch if you're easily scared, trust me. In late 2012, a young girl was just chilling at home for the evening. She was 19 and she'd just moved out of home into her own place. However, all of a sudden her emails started popping off and going absolutely insane. So she thought, what's going on? So she went onto her emails. She opened one of them up, which took her to a link, which came up with this. It said, are you alone? She thought it was some kind of stupid joke and went, ha, yeah. Then this message popped up, see you soon. She thought it was some kind of joke, but was slightly creeped out. Later on, she heard banging coming from downstairs, and she then began to be scared. When she looked out of her window, she could see a figure on the end of her driveway, and she was terrified. She then heard the door smash open, and saw this guy staring at her from down the corridor. He said, I told you I was coming. She turned around, smashed a window, and legged it into the night. She ran right into the forest where she managed to call the police and get help. The guide managed to get her IP address and find out where she lived.
This man picked his nose for over 30 years and you won't believe what happened to him one day. As a little kid, Michael had a horrible habit of picking his nose every day. His parents always told him to stop picking his nose, but he just wouldn't listen and he just kept doing it all the time. Soon, Michael carried this nasty habit onto his school and everybody would make fun of him for it. In fact, he would get bullied hours on end just because he picked his nose all the time. But one day, 30 years later, when Michael was sleeping in his bed, something crazy happened. While he was sleeping, he started to feel something very itchy up his nose and he got up immediately. But as soon as he took one look in the mirror, he was shocked. Immediately, he rushed himself to the emergency room where the doctors took one look at him and told him that he had only 5 years left to live. And you won't believe why this happened or what happens next. If you want to know what it is, then follow for part 2. This boy went missing for over 3 years, but when he finally returned, his parents noticed something so shocking. Nicholas Barclay was a 13-year-old boy who had went missing in 1996 after a basketball game. After a couple of days, his parents started to get very worried and they notified the police that Nicholas was missing. Immediately, the police began searching for Nicholas, but even after months, they still hadn't found him. But then something so shocking happened 3 years later. Somebody called Nicholas's parents to notify them that Nicholas had been found in a village. Although this news was a bit strange, his parents were just really happy that he had been found. Without even thinking twice, they immediately had him come over to the house and they spent a lot of time with him. But as they began talking to him, they noticed something very strange about Nicholas. And then the craziest thing happened. If you want to know what it is, then follow for part 2.
This is why you should never use Craigslist, part 1. Back in 2012, when Craigslist was popular, a man by the name of Richie had arrived back at his house just to see that it was completely broken into. Richie had noticed that he was robbed and he had lost a bunch of valuable stuff, including 2 TVs, all his video games, and his Xbox. Richie instantly called the police, and when the police arrived, they weren't much help. The police had searched Richie's whole entire house and didn't come up with anything, so there wasn't much they could do. So immediately after, Richie hopped on Craigslist and started browsing looking for new TVs. And while searching through Craigslist, Richie found a 40-inch TV that was identical to his. So he contacted the owner and they scheduled a time to meet. Later in the day, Richie arrived at the man's house who owned the 40-inch TV. Richie was brought down to the basement of the man's house and he had noticed that the 40-inch TV he owned was the same one that was stolen from him. And while looking, Richie also noticed the same Xbox that was stolen from him. This is the horrifying story of how a kid witnessed a murder during a snowstorm. The story starts off where a kid and his older brother were playing hide and seek on a snowy night. At the time, the kids were very young and had to ask for permission to go outside and play in the snow. After getting their parents' permissions, both the kids go outside and the older kid counts while the younger kid hides. Since the kids live right next to the woods, the younger kid decided to hide in the woods. He started to make his way into the woods when he had noticed footprints. The footprints weren't too old, so the kid decided to follow them with his flashlight. And after following the footprints for a couple minutes, the kid finally found something. He ran into a big black bag that smelled horrible. And right as he found the bag, he noticed someone with a flashlight right behind him. It was his older brother, so he called him over to take a look at the black bag. And as the older brother got closer, he slowly realized what was inside the black bag. But before he could even make it to the bag, he heard footsteps in the distance. Part 2 is coming out right now.
This is why you should never, ever ding-dong ditch somebody's house. See, back then it used to be fun and innocent, but with this story right here, everything has just changed. One day at night, a group of high school kids all decided to hang out and go ding-dong ditching. One of the boys was super anxious about going ding-dong ditching because he's never done anything like that in his life and he didn't want to get in trouble with the police or anything. The other 2 kids just thought it was super innocent to do and like, screw it, let's have fun. They decided to make the kid who had a lot of anxiety about it ring the doorbell, and they were all going to run back to the friend's house. The kid who was anxious to do it said, "Are you sure you want to ring the doorbell of the neighbor across the street?" The 2 kids said, "Who cares? It's just an old man. It's not like he's gonna chase us." Here's where things get dark. So the kid walks up, rings the doorbell, and starts to run, but the door swings open and the neighbor grabs his arm. The other 2 kids run. It turns out the neighbor had been listening the entire time while they were plotting this. I'm running out of time, but as always, I'm posting part 2 right after this, so go check it out. Leave a like and a follow.
A school bully poured super glue in this girl's hair, but it was the revenge that she got after that will leave you speechless. Hardy was a boy in the 8th grade who would make fun of all the 6th graders that came to the school. He would frequently taunt them and even physically abuse them sometimes. But because all the 6th graders were so scared, nobody complained to the teachers or parents, and Hardy would get away with it every time. And the story began when a new student named Elizabeth joined the 6th grade at Hardy's school. When she first got to class, she noticed that Hardy would make fun of all the other girls in the school. However, she never experienced anything wrong with Hardy because she would be nice to him all the time. But soon things began to get strange because Hardy began acting very mean to Elizabeth. He would bully her every single day of school. But then one day the worst thing happened when Elizabeth was walking into the school building. Hardy put some very hot super glue right above the door so when Elizabeth walked in, it fell all over her. And you won't believe what she does next. Follow for part 2. A school bully poured super glue in this girl's hair, but it was the revenge she got after that will leave you speechless. Part 2. One day, Hardy decided to put burning hot super glue right above the door when Elizabeth was walking in. Unfortunately, as she walked in, it dropped all over her face and it burned her entire hair. Immediately, Elizabeth burst into tears, and what she does next is crazy. But before I tell you, I want to thank you guys so much for the support you've been showing me. And in return, I want to give you these products for completely free of charge. So hurry and click the link in my bio for this crazy offer. Make sure to do it fast because this offer only lasts for 3 days and you guys can win a free iPhone, a free Xbox, a free PS5, or even a free Nintendo Switch. Anyways, after Elizabeth started crying a lot, she told her parents what had happened and her parents were out to get the perfect revenge. Together, her mom, her dad, and Elizabeth began. So what they did was made a Facebook post about Hardy, and Hardy was suspended from the school forever. This crazy man killed over 50 children and we still don't know where he is. The mysterious man was a man who lived in Texas around 20 years ago. It all started in the 1980s when kids were left home alone by their parents. This mysterious man would show up at their doors, ring their doorbells, and abduct the kids. He would frequently wait for the parents to leave and he would make sure that he kept track of everybody who was home alone that night. Over the last few years, the cops searched and searched, but they just couldn't figure out where this mysterious man went or where he took the children. The creepiest part was that he would know every time that some child was left home alone. And to this day, we still don't know how he did it. After the kids were alone at night, the man would show up at the door, ring the doorbell, and tell the kids that pizza was here. He would then open the door and take the kids when they unlocked it. But then one day, the police were able to figure out how he looked because of a mysterious clue that he had left behind. And you won't believe what it is. Like and follow for part 2.
Now, you guys, this story is why you should be careful when you buying and selling stuff with people online and you have to meet them. Joseph Vendel was a 29-year-old realtor and he was selling his dirt bike on Facebook Marketplace. Old man by the name of Jalen Harvey, he then hit up Joseph about buying the bike. Joseph wanted $2,800 for the bike and Jalen agreed. So Joseph went to Jalen's apartment to make this sale, you guys, but when he arrived there, it was something totally different. See, Jalen had never planned to buy this bike. He was going to steal it from Joseph. He gunned Joseph down, put Joseph in his own car, and went and abandoned the car outside of the city. Now, when Joseph failed to come home and they hadn't heard from him, that's when his family then contacted authorities. Around 5 a.m. Monday morning, that's when they found Joseph's dead body in the back seat of his car. After going through his message history and finding out that he was supposed to link up with Jalen, that's when they went to Jalen's apartment. But they found that Jalen's apartment was just crazy. So after reviewing the messages, they see that he linked up with Jalen to sell his dirt bike. Now, when they arrived to Jalen's apartment, you guys, they found something that was just stupid. Jalen was there, the murder weapon was there, the dirt bike was there, you guys, and Jalen confessed.
According to JPSO, Harvey is in custody with a first-degree murder charge. JPSO says Harvey admitted to shooting 29-year-old Joseph Vendel multiple times after they met with the intention of Vendel selling his dirt bike to Harvey. That transaction led to Vendel's demise, and according to
Now, you guys, Jalen gave a full confession, but he would not tell why he did it. Now, police believe that he did it simply just to rob him, but he could have robbed him without killing him. If you're buying something from somebody off Facebook, or if you're meeting somebody, always be careful. Always take somebody with you and always meet in a public place. Do not go to somebody's home.
This cop would wave to a little boy every single day, but then one day the boy wasn't there and you won't believe what the cop found out. Jason was a 7-year-old boy who enjoyed waving to the cop in his neighborhood every day. Jason would stand outside of his house and wait for the cop to come and say hi to him and go back inside. Every single day this would happen as the cop passed by in his cop car, but then one day something very strange happened. As the cop was going by the neighborhood, he was waiting for Jason to say hi, but he noticed that Jason actually wasn't there. Normally this wouldn't be weird, but Jason had been outside for the last 2 years straight, so the cop started to get a little bit worried. As soon as he noticed that Jason wasn't there, the cop got out of his car and ran straight into Jason's house, even without knocking. He then ran upstairs straight to Jason's room and he noticed that something very strange was happening in Jason's room. What the cop found next will leave you absolutely shocked. If you want to know what it is, then follow for part 2.
Elizabeth Sullivan was first reported missing. Her husband is finally sentenced for her murder.
Prosecutors say after stabbing the wife and mother to death, The former Navy man hid her body in a freezer for 2 years before later dumping it in the San Diego Bay. News 8's Richard Allen has more on Elizabeth's loved ones' pleas for justice leading up to the judge's decision.
Well, that's right. Prosecutors say mounting financial pressures and marital difficulties led to Matthew Sullivan murdering Elizabeth, his wife, and the mother of the couple's 2 young daughters.
He didn't give her a quick, painless death. It was essentially torture.
1 year after a jury found 36-year-old Matthew Sullivan guilty of brutally stabbing his wife Elizabeth to death in their Liberty Station home, the former Navy man learns his sentence, 16 years to life in prison. Leading up to that in San Diego Superior Court Friday, Elizabeth's loved ones had their say.
The longer sentence won't make the pain go away, nor will